been quite a while since we've had a video on the filling of the K style cups, or the N as Nespresso style cups. So what I'm going to do today is take you back through and show you the latest information on it. We've had some changes, we've had some adjustments. There are certain machines that work better for certain types of cups, as well as different situations in which you may be filling the cups, or the type of cups that you want to use, which would dictate whether you use the AZ1 cup system, manual or semi-automatic, or the fill and seal system. So we'll get started and talk about that now. First and foremost is using a good grinder. You can see right here we have our industrial Canyon grinder, our BC66 Grand, which does not have the stand. This is not really necessary for doing K-cups or things like that, because you don't really need a highly productive grinder. You could use something like a Bunn. But the key element is, regardless of what type of grinder you're using, is that you set the settings right. And on like a Bunn grinder, for example, you would want the settings set somewhere between drip and espresso. Most of those have a fine setting. Some of them even have like 3 points where the fine setting is, and you may want to explore the finest of that, and then working your way up to just the regular in the middle fine. What you don't want to do is grind it too fine, because the water, as it's pressurized through the cup, will seek its quickest way out, and it will deliver like tunnels or rivers through that cup and not saturate the cup if your grounds are like powder. So you want to have a fine grind, but not too fine. We'll show you a close-up if we can, to give you an idea of the consistency of the grind and how fine it should be. But you can play around with that yourself to adjust it to what works best for you, as well as how many grams you're putting in the cup. So the first thing you do is fill up if you're going to use the AZ1 cup system, you need a filling machine, and we're going to show you how to use the automated filling machine. You fill up the hopper, and by the way, when you get these machines, they come packed in such a way for shipping. So once you take them out of the box, there are 2 long bolts that have to be removed from the bottom, and they're marked, as well as on the manual they're marked, so that you properly remove those. And then the hopper gets set on top and twisted to lock it into place. Once you've removed, set up, and plugged in your unit, you simply turn it on. And when it gets turned on, you have a ways to adjust it. Let me let it load up here. I have it currently set for 8.5 grams. The way you adjust the grams, and it may come preset with 0, is use these arrow up or arrow down button. So we're gonna take it all the way up to 9 grams. And keep in mind, the first time that or a couple times that it works, it needs to calibrate, so you might get slightly more or slightly less in your cup. So if you don't want to use those to make K-cups, just pour it back into the hopper until it calibrates. The second line down is the speed in which you want it to load. You got a slow, you've got middle or medium, and then fast. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to slow, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. And this is set for off right now, or it's not set to not be used. So I'm going to hit the start button, and it should automatically load up close to 9 grams. As you can see, it slightly went over, but I'm not worried about 1/10 of a gram. While we're looking at the control panel, I did want to mention one other thing. At the end of the day, when you're done, if you still have coffee in the hopper and you don't want to try to figure out how to get it out, because you can't lift the hopper off without it all pouring out the bottom, there's a discharge button you can push here and hold for 5 seconds. Hold a bag underneath this, or put it at the end of your table, and discharge all the coffee you're not planning on using. Then you can use a simple shop vac to clean out the unit. So we're going to get right into this and show you a little bit more about the filling unit. There's a couple of ways people go about using the filling machine. Sometimes they just fill trays that might go into like baker trays on one of those baker shelves, and just fill tray after tray and get ready to do the sealing later. Or they may, if they're working by themselves, just take it once they fill the actual sealing unit, and this is the manual one. We also have the semi-automatic one, and then just seal them as they fill them. And so we're letting that one warm up now. We're going to show you how to use the filling machine. As you can see, I leave a stack of cups nearby so I can have quick access. This is already filled up to 9 grams. The key thing to keep in mind when you fill a cup is as soon as you put that cup under there, there's an electric eye that's going to sense your hand and it's going to discharge. And then it's going to begin refilling the cup. So you want to get your hand out of there and your cup out of there before the other one's filled, which is the reason why in this demo I'm showing it to you in slow, whereas most of the time I actually do the filling in medium. Now, as you might notice, I left it with the lip of the chute covering the cup, and I'll show you that again. The reason I do that is so if you were to put the cup down farther and trigger it off, you might get some that actually gets on the side of the cup, which would not give a good seal. So you got to be careful about that. But as you can see, you can fill these up pretty rapidly and either put them in a tray or you can put them directly into the AZ 1 cup sealing machine. Don't know how well you can see, but you can kind of get an idea of how this filled up at 9 grams. Sometimes because you've put coffee in there and it uses a weighing device that kind of vibrates, it can put extra air into the cup. And if it does, just kind of tap it down before you put it into the sealing unit, just so that you got plenty of room for sealing. Just to recap what I said earlier about the control panels, once you turn it on, this red X is going to be highlighted telling you that it's not ready yet. The top buttons are to adjust the amount that you want it to be measured up or down, and then there's one in the center that if you want to return to 0 to start over, for some reason you don't want it on anything, perhaps when you're done. The middle row is the speed in which the cup loads. I showed you a couple where it was done slow. I'm going to show you a couple where it's done on medium, so I'm going to switch it to medium. That's generally what I leave it at, but you got to watch if you're putting the cup under the lid and holding it, under the chute and holding it for a moment, that the next batch doesn't fill and then see the hand with the electric eye and release to where you got double dosages in the cup. So you can see it gave me a little bit of time, but the actual filling time was very fast. Now, if I were to go to fast, like if you really have a speedy worker, we could put it to fast. And, it fills up super fast. Problem is with the fast speed is, I don't know if you can see the control panel, it tends to sometimes, because it's doing it so fast, it puts too much in there. So I'm going to slow it back down to medium. I'm going to take that out because 12 grams is more than I want to use. I'm pouring that back in the hopper. Now it's going to take a moment or so to recalibrate, so I'm going to go ahead and pour it back in. You can see it might go 3 or 4 or 5 times to where there it goes. After 3 times, in this case, it recalibrated and now has 9 grams. So medium tends to be the number that I go with, but if you're concerned that you're going to fill the cup too soon and have it discharge, there's nothing wrong with going to slow. It's still pretty fast. Don't know how well you can see, but I like to set these manual ones to 185 degrees Celsius. As you may have seen in our previous videos, the way to switch that is to hit the set button, and you'll see it's blinking on the bottom one. You just move that back and forth to where you have it set to whatever temperature you want. But because I want it on 185, I'm just going to leave it there, push the set button back, and somewhere in that 180 to 185, and I like to set the timer, which is right here, to 3.5 seconds with the particular cups that I'm using. Some cups seal at a much lower temperature, and if you notice melting of the cups, seems like we had some black ones in the past that melted at a much lower temperature. You may want to turn that down. We've had it some where you turn down as far as to 140 degrees Celsius. Generally, you don't need to go beyond about 185, and if it's off by a degree or two, it shouldn't present an issue. And I already have some set up in here, so I'm going to go ahead and seal those, but then I'm going to show you the light comes on after 3.5 seconds. You probably can't see it very well because of the lighting in here. But also there's a little light that comes on the timer. I pop these out from the bottom. I check them real quick to make sure that they're sealing properly. And as long as everything's sealed properly, I'm going to throw them in a box, and later on we will put them in bags or in fancy boxes to sell retail. In case you haven't noticed, I'm actually in my warehouse, so I haven't been abiding by all the rules, and these aren't for resale, these are just for our personal use and for demos. So you may have noticed I didn't use the gloves when I was doing some of the process, but to make some of you happy that critique me in my videos, I've put the gloves on, and of course in many places you have to also put a hairnet on. So I'm not going to show you my head whether I have a hairnet on or whether I even have hair right now. So we're just going to put those lids on. We align them up within the pins that are on for each hole. Push this in, pull down the manual handle, hold it down till the light comes on, then slowly lift it up. This is not a slot machine. If you keep letting go and letting it bounce up, over time it's going to loosen wires and cause you problems. It's not going to work. And so I give it a quick check. Everything's looking really good. They're sealing well. In case you can't see it, there I'm pulling one of the ends off so you can see it's sealed real well. There they are, and we're ready to move on. One other thing I wanted to mention is the new models have a silicone gasket on the front. Don't know if you can see it from the video. Do not take that off. That silicone gasket aids in the sealing process as it gives a bit of a cushion between the two layers of steel as the lid is being pushed onto the cup, so it seals better. So follow that process. And at the beginning I said you may choose this machine, you may choose the fill and seal. Here's the reason why many are choosing this. The fill and seal fills a chamber, so it fills by volume, so it's always going to be 10 to 11 grams. It can only be used for coffee. These systems can be used for tea, for supplements, for powdered drinks, but just a note, when you're doing powdered drinks, you would not use the cups that have the welded filter. You use a cup without a filter, otherwise it won't process it properly in the Keurig or the other type K-Cup machines. And by the way, K-Cup is a registered trademark of Keurig, so I don't get sued for that. Okay, moving on. So another reason why you might want to use this machine over the fill and seal is if you decide you want to go from using recycled cups with the foil lids and you want to go to using the compostable or biodegradable cups that sometimes use paper lids. The fill and seal will not seal cups that have paper lids because it uses induction heat, which only heats metal. This will seal anything because it's an actual heat plate. So that's another reason why you might choose this system. You can ask us about our specials. We're running a special right now, whether it be with the manual or the semi-automatic and the filling unit for a really good price, several $100s below our web price. So email Randy at BuckeyeCoffee.com or info@bcroasters.com, and you can get that information. So if you have any questions, email us, and hopefully this will give you some information for thought. Thank you.